First, I would like to thank Alex and for Empire State Capital for the invitation to come to this conference. For me, it's the first time in Ukraine, and I'm quite impressed on the high-tech sector, on the potential, on what I see. And I'm going to discuss in a few minutes, the next few minutes. I will start with some short description of GIZA. Maybe after that, discussion of the Israeli venture capital development. Not because I want to discuss the Israeli venture capital, because you have to look at it at the Ukrainian eyes, because anything that happened in Israel in the last 22 years, I believe can happen also in Ukraine, and definitely it should be some kind of a vision of a mark. So let's start. GIZA. GIZA was formed about 22 years ago, and one of the Israeli pioneer venture capital funds started actually when the Israeli venture capital industry started. We are focused on early stage companies. We are managing more than $600 million, 5 funds. Our investors are basically foreign investors, leading institutions from the US, Europe, and Asia. And we are focusing on all the main sectors active in Israel, basically the IT sector, the healthcare sector, and the digital IoT, etc., everything that is actually the most active sectors in the Israeli market. I would like to add that we are also have a partnership in 2 funds outside of Israel, one of them in Poland, GPV, established 4 years ago, which is doing very well, on Polish. And the second one is Spain, Swan Lab, a fund that already had the first closing, and we continue to be a $40–50 million fund. And we are discussing a possibility to cooperate with Alex, with Empire State Capital, maybe to establish a fund that will focus mainly on Ukrainian potential early stage startup. Talking about GIZA, about Israel, about performance, one of the main reasons at the end of the day to invest in venture capital funds, you want to make money. Performance is key, is crucial. And when it comes to performance, at the end of the day, investors usually are looking at these high-risk activities as something that can bring, also high return, high income. So just to give you one numbers, on our recent fund, GIZA 5, IRR, 27% net to the investors, and also the other indications are one of the top 20 or 30%, even 10% compared to the US funds. Most of our investors are coming, as I said, from the US. So in order to bring money, we need to bring performance. Anyone that invests in Israel, compare us to the best funds, the top quartile funds in the US. It's a problem, but it's not all our funds made money. One of them is underwater, but most of them made money. And this is one of the best funds in the Israeli market. Talking about the Israeli VC track record, as I said, started in 1992. Only one Israeli VC funds exist. Again, I'm talking about Israel, but instead of Israel, maybe you should say Ukraine 2016. And looking forward for the next 10 years, one of the problems, basically, generally speaking, one of the challenges, most of the development of the venture capital in all the countries around the world, including the United States, Israel, Taiwan, South Korea, started with a substantial incentive from the government. Unfortunately, the government, usually these plans related to the venture capital takes 10 years, 15 years actually to implement, but most of the politicians cannot look for more than 6 months, 1 year. So it's always a problem, when it comes to establish some incentive programs in Israel, in the world, regarding venture capital. Anyhow, these are some of the numbers. I don't want, to go over them. They are quite impressive numbers in the last 17 years. By the way, anyone that wants to get, a software copy of the presentation can get it, from Empire State. Just to give you a global comparison, a global view of the venture capital industry, of course, the United States is #1 by far. 2015, $60 billion was invested in the United States, by far the largest one. If you look, China is increasing substantially. China is becoming a major competitor, a major problem to all the venture capital activities outside of China. And it's going to grow, in a very high speed, going forward. You just see, that the rate of growth of the Chinese investment from 2014 to 2015 is almost 100%, a substantial amount of investment. Israel is relatively small, but when it comes to technology, basically Israel is second only to the Silicon Valley on technology-based type of startup or venture capital. If you look at the investment per capita, of course, the number in Israel are substantially higher compared to the US, and I didn't put the number on China. It's clear, that it's much larger. One of the advantages of Israel, and also maybe Ukraine should repeat it or should imitate it, if you look, at the investment, in the largest states in the United States, of course, Silicon Valley, California, $27 billion, almost 50% of total investment in US of the $60 billion goes to California. Israel is #4, but I add, on the table on the side, the number of Israelis working on the high-tech industry outside of Israel in the Silicon Valley is between 80 to 100,000. This is a huge number. In New York City, it's more than 50 to 60,000 Israelis. Total employees in Israel is around $300,000. So, and almost the same number, or 70% of this number is outside. So working, with the ecosystem, especially in the US, there are many Ukrainians that live there, that you can cooperate with them, we should cooperate with them, and they can bring, the added value to the industry. Israeli VC at a glance, I'm not going to go over all the numbers, just to give you, on the last 3 lines, the number of R&D centers, which is key to the activities, in this industry. In Israel is huge, more than 300, number of incubators, and the total number of investment is going every year in the last 3 years. Last year, more than almost $4.5 billion, which is for in a country like Israel is a huge, huge number. Also, if you look at the exits, in last year, more than $11 billion. Most of the exits in Israel are mergers and acquisitions. Some of them are IPO, initial public offerings. Most of the public offerings are in NASDAQ. So you see, that in the last year was a record year, and going forward, it looks that this year is going to be even better. The main ingredients of success and the critical mass of each one of them is really key, because it's not enough to have only a small part in each of them. I mentioned, what we consider to be, the main ingredients. I'm not going to go over all of it. Just to mention, 2 or 3 main items, the entrepreneurial culture, I'm going to discuss it. Having enough capital on all the ecosystem, on all the food chain, from early stage to late stage is key. And having, approved exit avenues, M&A or IPO, because at the end of the day, this is a business the investors want to make money, and you are being judged by making money. So this, having, exit avenue is key to this success. I'm going to discuss a few items. Again, I am asking you to look at it at the eyes of Ukraine and to see what Ukraine should do in order really to make it successful in the next 10, 15 years. I mentioned also government support. In Israel, you have the Office of the Chief Scientist. Actually, the industry started with a program called Yuzma. I'm going to mention a similar program, that we propose to do also in Ukraine. But, the government should look at the venture capital on the high-tech as part of the infrastructure of the country. As utilities, as transportation, train, venture capital is the same. It's infrastructure. If you want to keep the young generation here in this country, You need to give them something, to think about it. Otherwise, the most capable people, the young people, will leave the country, will go outside. Europe, US, everyone, even to Israel. And we have some in Israel. What does it mean, culture, Israeli DNA? We mentioned some of the points that we believe create the whole ecosystem, which when we define entrepreneurship approach, attitude, DNA, we are talking about actually the Israelis challenging, questioning everything, strong drive, must-win attitude, knock on every door, not afraid, solution-driven approval for real problems. Israelis are not talking about theoretical problems. They are trying to be practical most of the time. Global thinking from inception. An early stage Israeli startup, when they start, they think about going global. Israel is a very small market, only 8 million people. Nothing, to sell in Israel on the high-tech. They have to compete outside, Asia, Europe, etc. And some of the description of the Israeli attitude is, I mentioned it here. Presence of multinational in the country is key. We have in Israel, actually, I mentioned the number before, almost any leading technology company that active out in the world is present in Israel. Presence in Israel, I'm not talking about selling its product, also selling its product, but I'm talking about R&D centers or some manufacturing activities. And in the last 2 years, I mentioned, many companies, mainly from China, from South Korea, from Japan, are becoming more and more active on Israel. Companies from US and Europe have been active all the time, from all the, as I said, from all the region in all the sectors. Strong presence of multinational actually brings the added value, the market demands, the product demands, also some investment, some co-investment, some exit, and some capital. And this is when we are making an investment in a portfolio company, we usually make a reference. We call one of the leading companies, ask them what is their opinion, assuming that you had any specific product like we want to have. Would you buy it? Would you not buy it? Etc. So having this strong relationship, this strong presence in key, and hopefully, in Ukraine, more and more global technology companies will come and will establish themselves as R&D center in Ukraine. Just to show you, the level of activities on the performance, on the exit. As I said, at the end of the day, you need to make money. The presence of the large multinational, this is one of the main source of acquisitions, of mergers and acquisition. I list here some of the examples. Companies like Cisco bought, 12 Israeli companies. I'm talking about the last 10 years, more than $6 billion. And you have IBM, you have Google, you have Apple, you have eBay. Actually, any leading company in the world. This is just a list of the select list of the largest companies. So the presence of multinational is a combination of exits. Having the full ecosystem, the full food chain, investing in the companies, starting from incubators, from seed, from early stage, and going up to late stage is also crucial. We found from our experience that one of the problems in countries like Poland, Spain, which as said before, we have some partnership with domestic VC funds. We don't have enough co-investors, enough syndication. The risk is very high. Usually, one of the main operational principles of any venture capital fund is to have co-investment with other funds. So we want to see many funds coming, to Ukraine, domestic and international, and to have the possibility to invest from the beginning until the late stage. And usually, you have different funds with different investment strategy. And if you have in each one of the categories, in the pre-seed, early stage, in the late stage, it's very important, it's key. And the relationship are basically some kind of competition. On one side, the competition from the best, most attractive investment opportunities. On the other side, let's cooperate. There is a lot of risk on the table. We can share it with all. We don't have to keep everything to ourselves. in Israel, you can see here the relationship. In the early stage, most of the investment is being done by Israeli VC funds, and in the late stage, on the right side, basically, this is the investment of foreign VC funds or largest VC, sometimes even private equity funds that are investing in the technology. Capital raised, we have to remember, that this is a cyclical business, and actually the level of activities depends on global activities. If you see here what happened, in year 2000 and year 2008, capital raised by Israeli VC funds, actually after a year went almost to zero because of the crisis. So people that are in this business have to have a long-term look. Information is also key. Investors that are coming to a country, they want to know who are the major other venture capital funds, startups, key executives. If you have a website or someone that is actually in charge of doing it in Israel, we have IVC, which was established actually by us 17 years ago. Any investors that come to Israel can get to know a full description, a full understanding of the industry. Last, our proposal, how to initiate, actually to expedite the Ukrainian venture capital funds. We suggest, to have, a program after the Yozma program. Yozma is the Israeli initial program that started actually the industry in 1992, to call it initiative, to have an allocation of capital of $250 million from the government to create 10 new VC funds, existing or new VC funds, each one of them $50 million or more, with government incentive as an LP, no management rights, no participation in the venture of up to 50%, $25 million. Should be a partnership between domestic team and international team, because in order to bring, to bring the international expertise and added value, but to create, a domestic expertise. And the number of existing venture capital funds, I said before, co-investment syndication is key. There are some very active. On the right side, we have one. On the left side, the same one. But we need many more. But what's unique about this program is to give, the investors an option actually to buy back the government portion during a period of 7 years, plus interest, etc. As I said, this program has been established in Israel originally. After that, many countries around the world looked at it, and this has some adjustment, related to Ukraine. I believe, it can create, a quite an energetic sector. As I said in the beginning, politicians don't look for 10 years, 15 years. They look only for 6 months and 1 year. So the chances that this will be implemented is very small. Thank you very much.